richer Indians this season are buying gold big time. These people are also buying pensions big time. But just as you got to be rich to buy gold, you got to be rich to buy pensions, poorer people cannot be in this market. And the principal reason why they can't be in this market is because of government employees buying a free pension for themselves. That is what we discuss in this edition of On Point. You know why pension is costly in India? Because government employees who get the most generous pension hardly pay for their pension, and or even the little that they have started, they were not paying till recently. It is you and I who are paying for the pension. Who's the other ones who is getting pension? Those who are salaried employees in the private sector. The government was creating or rather giving them a subsidy to give them a provident fund cum pension, mostly provident fund, little bit pension, but again government funded. So how do you expect anybody who is not a salaried person, who lives off his wits, who is essentially an adult, has a family but doesn't have a steady source of income, would be able to get a pension? The answer is no. And this is after India has been running ostensibly a very large pension system since 1951. So how did it happen? Let's look at the government employees first. A government employee gets a pension as soon as she retires of 50% of the last pay drawn. This pension, how does it come from? It comes from government money. What does that mean? It means money for which you and I have paid tax. About a good percentage, look at this data, of government money goes to pay for this pension. In 2004, thanks to the World Bank prodding, the government realized that there is no way that this gravy train can run. So it changed the rules to say that from now every employee who joins government, center or state, will have to pay a percentage of their income, about 10%, it varies, 10 could go up to 11, but roughly within 10% of their monthly salary, basic salary, towards the pension corpus, and the government will also contribute more. Obviously government employees didn't like it. So central government, it got implemented, most of the state governments didn't. And even now there are lots of state governments which stay away. In fact, it's interesting that our principal opposition party, Congress, its leader Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who talks a lot about inequality and why the richer people are taking away lots of benefits, doesn't see any contradiction in supporting the government employees stance, because government employees now both even center as well as at states are agitating that they want to go back to the pre-2004 system, which is they will not contribute anything from their salary towards their pension. And India is a government dominated society. Government employees set the tone for more practically everything: salary structure, employment structure, government housing, government pensions, government health schemes. So therefore the rest of the economy also wants a similar benefit. So let's step back from the government. The next is the private sector employees. In 1951, the India government ran in the Employees Provident Fund organization as a means to create a pension structure for the private sector employees. What happened there? This organization again does the same thing. Remember, the government employees till 2004 were contributing nothing, but in the EPF, the employees were asked to contribute a percentage of their income, 8%, 10% of their income with a matching contribution from the employer to build a pension corpus for about 35 to 40 years, which they can pay for their retirement benefit. What's the catch here? The pension corpus never got built. The Employees Provident Fund organization, run by 3 sets of people: government officers, trade unions, and a very reluctant set of representatives from the employers, who basically have always stayed silent in these deliberations. In the Central Board of Trustees, told the central government just one thing: we can't be bothered about creating a corpus for these employees. So you, that is Mr. Government, create a corpus for us. The government agreed. And what has the government done since then? It has created a shadow debt scheme. Yes, a shadow debt scheme for funding the interest of these employees. As of now, that scheme has been closed, but the system still runs. The government pays an interest on the debt it doesn't want, and from that interest a provident fund is created. So a lump sum gets accumulated and is get paid to the employee when she or he retires. What happens to the pension? Remember, this is supposed to be a pension scheme. After obviously having paid out such a lump sum, there isn't any money left for the pension scheme. So the pension scheme stays unfunded. Yes, unfunded. There's hardly any support, because the government can only afford to pay for the provident fund of the employees in the private sector. Because remember, that's also a draw on the rest of the people of this country. So that money, so nobody gets a pension. Yes, they do get a pension of about 1500 rupee, 2000 rupees a month, just a token amount. So at the best level, the government employees; the next level, the employees of the private sector who have got a salary, they get a provident fund, they don't get a pension. The government employees get both provident fund as well as the pension. What happens to the rest of the people? Every other Indian, an adult who's working anywhere, there is no pension system, because after having met these humongous needs, and these data shows it clearly, what has been the government's payment towards provident fund of the employees provident fund, what has been the government's payment towards its own employees pensions benefits. The government, center or states have no money left to finance anything. And pension is not something that the society owes us. A pension is something that an employee earns on the basis of her working life. That is a basic axiom. So how will it come from? Well, it will come from whatever the country earns, whatever the country generates, its GDP. From that will be the pension corpus that we will draw. So the Pension Fund Regulatory Development Authority, which was set up in 2004, yes, the revision that I talked about in 2004, has drawn up a very elaborate, very smart system where it has appointed fund managers. You and I can go there, put our money, a regular stream of investment into any one of the funds depending on our risk appetite, and draw that money as pension when we retire, or at any age that we think is our retirement age. It could be 20 years, it could be 40 years, it could even be more. That's the individual's choice. That's smart. And how does this money earn income? Not from government debt. It earns by regularly investing this money in equities. It's a basic law of equity, basic law of any markets, that when a money is put into the equities, then over time that money will accumulate a substantial corpus. That is what happens when we buy a house. That is what happens when we buy any other asset. It happens therefore the best in the equities market. So there is no reason to be surprised. It is not the government's duty to cheat somebody else, I really use the word cheat, and take her money and then pay me my pension. Since this means living off one's wealth, earning and then getting to pay back for myself, there's an uproar. Government employees want to go back to the pre-2004. That means even the current contribution will not be there. They'll just be drawing on the state. The Employees Provident Fund is transforming its corpus to say, we can't provide you a pension, so just withdraw the money and be done with it. It's no more a pension fund, even by design. So why can't the country shift towards what is a real pension scheme, which is that under the PFRDA. The PFRDA system is not perfect. People can calculate and show that some other systems, some other investment avenues could give better returns, but that is misleading. The point is, you want a long-term retirement planning which is, if not optimum, close to the optimum. The system, the PFRDA system promises that. Don't be misled by the fact that something else could be there to give a short-term benefit or some other benefit. That means you are continuously, instead of building up a pension corpus quietly, comfortably, you are always second guessing yourself. That doesn't help. And that is being used, that criticism is being used opportunistically by lots of people who want to keep their own gravy train alive. The answer is clear. Yes, it can, and it is egalitarian. Everybody is on the same pedestal. Everybody earns pension from letting their money work through the system. The question is, do we understand that this reform is about us doing it rather than asking the government to do the dirty job? And that's all from this edition of On Point. For a detailed description of what we discussed here, please visit my Substack. The link is in the description below. Thank you.